Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Always difficult following up a session right after lunch, but we'll try and keep this fun and, again, interactive. A common theme to wherever I present is there's never a PowerPoint. I think it's easier to just have a conversation. Also, it's a very interesting mix of people in the room, because at some level, I think there are people who are very well versed with liberal arts, and the others are embracing it. So I think as the admissions dean at Jindal, for instance, one of the reasons I joined them was to build the liberal arts program. So they gave me a fancy title which had institution building written on my card, which I think is a very cool title to have. So when we started building the liberal arts program, the whole idea was to sort of educate people, and more so parents. So we ran a survey this about 4 years ago, which essentially showed how many kids from India, students, end up studying liberal arts in the West. And you'd be very surprised with the number. I'll send you that research report if you give me your email addresses. So when I was talking to the people setting up this conference, I said, we must talk about liberal arts. It's sort of the elephant in the room in many ways, because parents think you're unemployable after liberal arts in India. And as someone who's built a liberal arts school, it's difficult convincing parents year on that your child is doing the right thing, probably chasing a dream, but will be employable, don't worry. About 90% of parents are still skeptical. So when we were putting the panel together, we've really sort of brought a mix of the West and the East. So we have a representative right here who's going to tell you more about what liberal arts is in America and why it is such a fabulous undergraduate degree to have. And he's at Denison College. And then you have a counselor who worked at probably one of the finest boarding schools in this country, who sort of spends time with children and parents trying to give them their best career advice. So we're going to involve you as much as possible. So should we start with you, Namrata, and have an understanding of the surge or the more number of applications you're seeing every year with liberal arts from your students?
Well, whatever I'm going to speak about is going to be of my past work, which was at the Doon School, Dehradun. And initially, when we started, it was a typical business management course, a little bit of going into, say, engineering and one or two design fields. And I think everyone in India has the same kind of students coming in with the same kind of course requests that, oh, I want to go to XYZ college. After that, when we really started interacting with universities and then them coming into school to speak about the liberal arts education, the first question that was in the mind of the student was, one, in the parents' mind actually, is this is equivalent to a BA program that we have in India. You all are aware of the BA program where you do not major in a certain subject, but you take 3 subjects and study it through the 3 years, and it's supposed to be one step down to the main honors program. So the first barrier to us was to get that out of the student's mind. And then the range went on from art history to physics and music. I have had, it's been a pleasure to advise students on a variety. Most often, they go to the US or to universities in India now and change majors. So they may start thinking that, oh, I want to go in for economics, and end up doing history and mathematics. Completely different. What they did not realize is that the skills that they needed were given to them by a different course rather than the ones they were aware of in India. So yes, it has shifted a lot. They are more comfortable because the parents were being educated every parent-teacher meeting that we had, and they understood that the student would have a major, they would have an honors degree, they would not be just, the whole concept of studying, say, nursing as a subject, or it's just adding value to the undergraduate education. I think it's moved a long way now, and with your institutions, yes, India also.
Yeah, it's a big time for change in the Indian higher education landscape. Because predominantly when we were growing up, even in Calcutta, it was simple. You had engineering, medicine and law, essentially as the primary careers that you chose. And this has sort of historically been the most conservative and money-making initiatives that parents tell children that, you know, in Hindi, this mera beta ya beti bada hoke doctor banenge, which space in India hasn't been easy, which is why a welcome for the last 4 or 5 years has been philanthropic efforts by people like IC3, Jindal or Ashoka University, whose bigger challenges are not competing directly with and understands the value of an engineer. In pink trousers across the room, and he looks you directly in the eye and says, "What will my son do when he graduates?" And it's a difficult question because I've never professed to knowing what anyone can do in the future, but at the same level, I can tell them that your son or daughter can major in economics with a minor in philosophy, or do a business with a minor in psychology, and they just sit there thinking, who is going to employ him? And you're just sitting there in that room thinking, there's a world of opportunity that your son or daughter is going to get introduced to, and you're thinking of a career 4 years from today, whereas the entire university process is sidetracked. So for the US, for instance, I'm assuming the liberal arts is a very respected and a very widely accepted degree. I'm sorry to say that, but that's what it is.
Thank you for saying that. I'm not too sure about that, too. There are a lot of my colleagues in this room. I don't want to represent the liberal arts from the American context 100%. I will say that the terminology liberal arts has to be further defined, and there's a contextual framework of school. I'm looking at Rollins here. Rollins and Denison are liberal arts that can speak to the curriculum of liberal arts or liberal learning. I want to kind of say that investment. We hear that a lot. So when you're asking any family in the United States, pay $60,000, $50,000, please come to our school, even if we give you a scholarship, they will ask in 4 years what will happen to my child. They just say it in a lot of big words, and they usually curse a couple ways along the way. But they are really struggling with that concept of what's liberal arts. I want to kind of put it out there that this kind of education of liberal arts in our history of the DNA of American higher education started what Harvard did, actually, and what Yale did many, many years ago. If you read our history of American higher education, it was about small classes, making character development, having intellectual conversation, and making the students grow. Now, sometimes it was contextualized by religious traditions, but overall, it was about all the schools in America started basically the same. Some have evolved. Some continue to have liberal arts curriculum as a general education requirement, even when you are going to become a nursing student. In the States right now, I will say that there is a great movement of there's a dichotomy going on right now about the liberal arts. The critical thinking, the writing, the intellectual dialogue to solve solutions that have yet to really solve problems of our society are going to come from agility of mind. The liberal arts is a conceptual framework of the agility of the mind. You're not being trained that, can I do this PowerPoint presentation? You're getting trained to solve issues, and I think that's the exciting part of liberal arts. It is about questions yet to be defined in society. And I think that's what we're trying to train, because technology is moving very fast. I do this session with students. I ask them, do they know what a beta tape is? And no one knows. Then you do a VHS tape, no one knows. Then you do a DVD, then you do a Blu-ray, then you do streaming. By then, everyone knows what's going on. What's after streaming, I say? Who will invent that? Who will think differently behind it? So in the States, we are struggling with this because our CEOs, our major, if you look at the Fortune 500 CEOs of America, they were all trained in the liberal arts. They might have gone on to get their MBA at Harvard. They might have gone on to different kinds of postgraduate degrees, but they were all trained in the sense of asking the right questions and solving the right answers. The we are having, and I'm looking at my colleagues here that do more admissions work. I actually do not work in admissions. I work for the president's office on strategic planning. They said you're Indian, so go to India. So I said, okay, I'll go, no problem. So
Good strategy.
Yeah, it was a great concept, and where else can you eat on the streets of India and enjoy it? But I think what I'm trying to say to you is liberal arts is a construct, for my colleagues from India, it's a construct of the future education. It is to set a strong foundation where you can grow. Each of our schools, right around, if I ask my colleagues here, they would tell you what's different about our distinctive of liberal arts. But at the fundamental end, I want them to write extremely well. I want them to defend their answers, and I want them to grow strong. Because I do not know if I can train them for something that is yet to be defined in society.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges we're going to face, and this is directly in perspective to India, is the size of the class, like you rightly mentioned. So at Jindal, we were greatly inspired at Rollins, which is when one of a visit to Rollins really inspired our vice to question why liberal arts is not a mainstream degree. And that's when we started carrying out research to see how many children every year were going out, and we were kind of blown away with the number. And when we started working on curriculum, we had to focus on things like economics and business, over and beyond things like philosophy or sociology or history, because you also have to make it, in the lack of a better word, sellable. So when we started this process, we ran a nationwide school visit campaign where we asked the first question to class 9s and 10s and then 11s and 12s, what is liberal arts? And maybe 5 kids would put their hands up, maybe 10 would. How many want to do engineering? And 90 hands would go up. And you started realizing the real problem lies in mentality and parents and in the way they think. But from the university perspective, from what Namrata might advise a child from the point of view of a counselor, or for me as a dean of admissions, is how do you maintain one quality? And unlike the US, which has 100 or thousands of liberal arts colleges, we have maybe 7 or 8 in India. So how do you maintain quality? And more importantly, class size. Like he rightly mentions, liberal arts, as much as it has to do with a degree, is how original is your thought process, which unfortunately, there's, it's in one of the boards in this country, which is widely followed, you're sort of encouraged to mug up. So my introductory lecture, which is on food, I inevitably have someone raising a hand and saying, sir, is this coming in the exam? And you're talking about the weather or cricket or politics and has nothing to do with class because you're doing an introductory lecture and you realize the faults that lie in our system. So liberal arts in many ways is coming as a very welcome change in the higher education scenario in India, where we genuinely feel we need more leaders. And before I bring Namrata back in, there's an example that I often talk about, is there's a real big reason why in India we have more salaried employees. We have more people who are willing to work for other people rather than having their own ideas. It's not just a problem with funding. It's also to have the ability of an education that allows you to think out of the box. It's not that these are 7 formulas, mug these up, come to an examination, write it, get 7 on 7, and get hired at Infosys or get hired at TCS or wherever. Very happy with that. And what follows is a life that is best defined as ordinary, because it's called an alarm bell life. You wake up in the morning to an alarm bell, someone makes your tiffin, you go to office, you meet your boss who's never happy with you. Then about 4 hours later, you hand him a file, the file comes back to you, which means you've got more work to do. You go back home, you watch Arnab Goswami on the news, then you put your alarm bell again, you have dinner, and then wake up to again the same bhindi lunch, ladyfinger lunch, to take back to office. The question to ask is a much larger question. Why have we slept since 1947 or whenever universities started coming up on liberal arts in India? It's not an old concept. But the question that I have for you and then the audience as well, as a nation, why have we waited till 2014 before we even had liberal arts colleges or liberal arts education? So do think about it, and I'm going to come to you once they've both given me their views.
outside of the box, there won't be any good solution. critically. Our Indian system, till school level, with the national curriculum, sadly, does not allow our students or our children to think critically and analyze material. I once had an old student get back to school with his wife, who was from Welland Girls and he was from Green School. Both presidents of, at some level, VPs of the Pinzi. And they were speaking to kids and they said, if you come for a job interview to a Pinzi, we would pick a liberal arts student over and above a business student or an engineering student. And they were all shocked. And one of the students asked, why would that be? So he said, well, you have to meet clients. And clients are people who you need to get in for business. Now, if you can only talk about engineering or you can only talk about your business degree, you will not get me back business. So I want someone who could talk about art history, who could have a conversation with a client on politics or something that interests them. So it's more about, we teach you how to do that. That's the on-job training. So those skills we can teach you on the job. But these skills is what an undergraduate education would give to you. And that's, I thought, hearing from someone who was in the school, who went through the system, went out into college, did well for himself, I thought that was a very good way for us to teach parents what the value of liberal arts education was. And they were present at that point of time. One was in Hong Kong and one was heading the India office. I'm not sure. My memory fades with things like this, but the bigger picture was that, that's what they saw undergraduate degrees at. Also, when students study in India or when they go to study overseas, the advice for me as a counselor to the parents is stop thinking like an Indian parent. Think like an American. Because if you're going to look at jobs in America or anywhere else in the world, think how they would look at an graduate education. So they do value liberal arts. Let your child do what they want to do. We want to carry the Indian way of learning and teaching into America, which really defeats the purpose. So, just look at physics. Physics and music, what a lovely combination. A student, there was a parent who said that, he has to come back to the business. The child was horribly sad that I want to do film. Presently, he's at Western University doing both business. So, you can always use that as the compromise between the parents. I often do that, but, when you have, there's a whole lot. You're shaking your head. Yeah. So I think.
I would say the same issues are also back in the States too. It is, my son is a music major and I don't know if he will be employed after, there is this fear, there's always this fear. And sometimes I think the big word in liberal arts is the passion. There's a great article, I don't know if anyone has read it, called William Cronin's article on the back piece. It's a very old piece. You can Google it, William Cronin. It is 2 pages. It's a great treatise about the educational value and outcome of learning in the liberal arts. Regarding why India, we can have a long conversation. Listen, it's very simple. India came out in 46, 47. Pakistan, India, changes in our government landscape. As a person that was born in America but of Indian descent, it was a tough time. Poverty ruled. You had to eat, you had to drink, you had to do. It was a time frame that, you have to think, they say Maslow hierarchy of needs. You have to eat and drink before you can think about it. Today, India is more wealthy than it has been in its trajectory. Sure. Today, we can open. Also, the number of Indians that are abroad that bring the liberal arts back to this country. So we are very fortunate that those that have been educated, myself included, I've come and taught here at the university. It's exciting to come back and be invited back to present, whether at the high school level or at the college level. So things are changing. So I think in 2014, it has happened. Yeah. And the world has become more global, and we have more information out there. I always say the liberal arts is also about maturation. It's not just about knowledge content, because you can watch all the YouTubes you want and learn things. It's about the maturation of a young person to find their passions where they want to go forward.
That's a good answer. Sort of just touching upon that, I think teaching at a liberal arts program in India, I think the bigger challenges are to make our students, our children, better read and to write better, which is a huge challenge. I don't know how many of you here teach as well, but how many of you face a problem with your students' writing? Now, like being LYK, for instance, which is almost like jump out of the window, I never want to see you again. Why couldn't you just use one extra syllable? I mean, what's wrong with you? But if you think about it, it's the texting and it's the WhatsApping generation. And when you ask them whether they read, they say yes. And then they say they read Chetan Bhagat, which means leave the class again. But the idea is, how do we actively start getting our students to believe in originality and to believe in writing better? And the example I give them is, if you go on Facebook and quote, well, in their case, Justin Bieber, the chances are they'll get about 47 likes, and they're very happy. And if they sort of come up with something themselves, they get 6 likes, out of which they're related to 5 people, and the other one's by mistake. So again, originality is never paid off. So when you're trying to get these kids to actively think and trying to make them understand that as important it is to academically be bright, it's also important to be an interesting human being, a well-informed citizen. So we ran a debate recently where, for the first time, we actually invited the RSS on our campus, which was quite an interesting experience for many of us. But we also invited different political parties, and we asked, the debate was about, is India moving right-wing? And we had students from the liberal arts school literally come on board as moderators and speakers. And needless to say, I don't think anyone from RSS is ever going to show up again because they blasted them out. But the idea was, it's been 2 years of working with these students who have an original mind, the way they read. I mean, it's something that we have to start working, but from school. Now, for instance, all the representatives here from schools in India, you have library periods till probably the 8th grade, 6th, 7th, 8th. What happens to 9, 10, and 11, 12? You have it till the 12th? Fantastic. Any other school here has it till 12th? Fantastic. And do you give out reading lists? But do you follow up on it as well? Or how does the process work? Would anyone like to talk about the process of reading at school?
Other than the role of a college counselor, I'm also a senior librarian at my school in Singapore. And no, but that's a challenge, I can tell you, especially with boys. And but that's the truth, you know. So we run reading programs for the students, and we have levels of reading abilities. It begins right from kindergarten, and then we get them into reading with various reading programs from scholastics. So we have tied up with scholastics, and we start getting them to read from young. But what happens with majority of the Indian students, because we have a huge population of Indian kids in our school, the moment they reach grade 7 or grade 8, they're told at home, you're not supposed to read, you're supposed to study. And that's where the big war or battle begins between school and home. Children refuse to stop reading, especially the past, I can say for the past 5 years, 4 years to be clear, yeah, 4 years. Children are so imbibed into the habit of reading that every time it rains, in Singapore, there are no seasons. It rains and shines every day. And so when there is a break, a short break or a long break, and it's raining, the library is overcrowded. The reading rooms are overcrowded. The corridors are filled. Children just take books and sit and read. They don't want to do any other activity. That is nice, but the majority of the kids who read are girls. The boys refuse to read. We compel them to take books. They will take it with them and put a tick mark, and then they'll copy a review from somewhere till they're caught.
Please, DOSCO's read. Do school boys read?
Oh, that's nice. I need to learn what you'll do to make them read, seriously.
I'll tell you.
We ran a reading school campaign which happened at Lamartine years ago, which was we bring lots of authors and writers on campus. I think that's a big way to get you see, when you add something tangible, unfortunately, the way students think now is dining table conversations with parents have changed. I think when I was growing up, we spoke a lot about, well, mostly cricket and how bad we were, but that's changed. But you never, when I meet a lot of students now, I can see a direct relation with what parents have said and how that's been imbibed within them. So when you make this point about reading and out of syllabus, which is what I tell them, at Jindal, for instance, we gave them a reading list, but I give a separate list, which is, say, M and the Big Whom by Jerry Pinto. I mean, it speaks about a man's relationship with his mother who's got Alzheimer's. Now, it's a very human story. We spoke about communities this morning, about service to community. It's very important to also embrace humanity. So a lot of the readings that we prescribe are trying, in some way, allowing our students, one, to read far more than what they're capable of, so to challenge them. And every semester what we try and do is we try and get them to submit one original piece of writing. Now this could be a play, this could be a script, this could be an essay or a research paper. Biggest challenge? Plagiarism, because they don't know how to quote. So again, when it comes down to a liberal education, now even at a high school level, my question to a lot of people sitting in the audience here is, what's the extra mile that you go to get your students to have an original mind? Because I know the CBSE structure is such that if you write anything outside of your syllabus, it's wrong. And if you write 10 pages about 5 keywords, you're correct, which is why we have 98 percenters in hundreds in this country without really defining what intelligence is. And you see that in a classroom where today I'm proud to say that the girl who's coming number one in my class, I mean, we live in a society where we rank students, had 67% in her boards. But today she has the most incredible grades with research in psychology, and she's going to Harvard, no less, to do a project. So I think the right kind of education, before they even think about liberal arts or whatever they want to pursue, is to try and create a mechanism of original thinking at your high schools. So my question to the audience and so many representatives from the best schools in this country, what do you do to make them original thinkers? Who would like to take a shot at that? Ma'am, please.
Yes, I am Revati Srinivasan, Director and Principal of Singhania School, Thane. I'd like to share that I'm connecting the reading habit and the writing habit to what we're doing to make children think differently. And I'd like to say we don't have any textbooks till grade 7. And we have no examinations till grade 4. So what we do is the textbooks or the curriculum books that the teachers have to use as reading materials for kids are written as original stories by students of grade 10, 11, and 12. So they write it for standard 1, 2, and 3, and I print it, publish it. So it's a beautiful book that we have. We have a lot of other books that we publish too, like cookery books, on health, fitness. So these are all original ideas that come in from the students of grade 11 and 12, sometimes grade 10 as well. It depends upon the subject. And they are prescribed as books in the school, and they are in the library.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, I think that deserves a round of applause. I think one of the best things to come to a conference on education is to share ideas and collaborate. And I think that's one way that others might want to follow lead. Anything else that, yes, ma'am. This is community service.
Thank you. I'm Reena from Meera International School. We are a traditional CBSE school. But what we've done, I totally agree that we keep telling them, read your syllabus, and syllabus has to be, and the keywords have to be there in the answer sheets. But what we've done is we've taken up the small concept of design your own story. As in, the child needs to read any novel the child wants in the library, any story, and just change the story according to his wish. If he's XYZ, how does he think he would react to this situation? This creates a new story, and we have a pin board in the library. So the child goes up and pins the story on the board, and everybody comes and sees. Once the child pins up the board in the whole class, and the librarian claps, and it's all good for 9th and 10th also, they get somehow motivated, and then the next story is done by the child who has never submitted it again. So just to go up on the board, and maybe at times for boys, this is a question, to impress girls also, like I can also. So that is an exercise that we do, and we found it very interesting, and it's given us results. Thank you.
Ma'am, that's.
So one of the things, early on what we do at the school is we give a lot of time for imagination and creativity. Our kids are in the sandpit 4 hours a day. They are in the play therapy room twice a week, thrice a week, just playing, telling their stories. You know, it could be even their own home stories, it could be their friends' stories, it could be concocted stories that they have managed to put it together. Sometimes it's just stories of trauma even that comes out. And once that age is passed, at the little middle, like the upper primary ages, their creativity is still in place. Their imagination is still in place. It's already been nurtured. It's already been helped. So they are able to, at that point, talk very freely from the heart about things they're seeing with their neighbor, with their peers, with their friends. And we have a lot of open forum at that time for discussion. That later on, by 9th, we see excellent strength in their writing also, that by the time has already been nurtured.
It's about motivation, right? And also, I'm going to look to my colleagues from the States here to kind of put theirs, and Canada, to put together the, I would like to hear from your point of view the liberal arts tradition, but I think it's about this integration. How do you integrate all those pieces? For my PhD is in young men. I have a long title for my doctorate, but the summary is, why are sophomore meaning second year students, not very bright kids? Literally, I worked on second year college men and why they don't have life purpose. Why don't they go to the next level? And so we have some sophomore year called Wise Fool, in a sense of you're not new, you're not old, but you have no direction. And then how do you work with them on that piece? But what I wanted to kind of ask my colleagues here is, for the liberal arts to really work, it's about synergy and integration of ideas from the abstract to the writing. Yes, it starts with creativity, but it can also be stamped out very quickly. And so the question is, how do you build reflection? By doing. Go ahead. It's all about.
I'm from Wake Forest University, and we have a center called the Undergraduate Research and Creative Activities Center. This is a relatively new center, but we wanted to make our students excited about research, and so we actually created a scholarship where students get a couple $1,000s to go anywhere in the world to answer a research question. And I think about 20 to 30 students get a scholarship every year to go in the world and answer a research question. But they have to submit a proposal to a board, and they have to write it out and have a faculty mentor. And I think those relationships are just as important as the research and the questions they're asking. But it's been really cool to see what the projects have been. And that center is relatively new. I think it's 5 or 6 years old. But that's been a really cool thing to see with our students.
Quickly, I'm from a Canadian university. I started off in an MBA program, and working off some of these fabulous things that you're doing to encourage creativity. The MBA students were under a lot of pressure when they first came. They were really worried about their assignments. And something simple that we did was install a proofreading program. So this allowed them, it encouraged them to be more creative. Critical thinking also was a big thing in their assignments. And it taught time management, which was great, because if they submitted 3 days in advance to the proofreading program, we would hire student volunteers to go through and correct grammar or point out grammar mistakes, edit the assignment for the students. So then they weren't so worried about all of those elements of writing and getting those correct. They were more concerned about and putting more emphasis on the original thought that they were putting into the paper. So it allowed them to focus more on the creativity and the critical thinking and not so much about the wrongs and rights of, the paragraph structure and the grammar. And then in turn, the faculty was happier with the assignments, and plagiarism obviously decreased, and we saw some really good original thought. So that was really simple to do, install that proofreading program.
About how their critical thinking skills are built or they become creative. But realistically, creativity, by its definition, is you are thinking outside the box or outside the stereotype or the accepted norm of a majority. So if you're building a movement of people, can being outside the box be taught? or is it by osmosis that they learn? You put a bunch of really creative people together in a group and expect them to pick up those skills, or how is it taught in the process?
I'm going to look to my U.S. colleagues. I work on the academic side. I used to be an associate provost. So what I think happens in the classroom in a liberal arts thing, whether it's small or big, it is about not only reading the text, but when I went to school, my mother made me take the encyclopedia. I don't know if you saw it. And then I would write an essay, and I just copied everything from the encyclopedia and put it on a piece of paper and went to kindergarten. And then I got killed. And then I had to come back, But what I'm trying to say is faculty, professors in the U.S., there's a great research study that came out from a whole Gallup organization that talks about the mentorship of a faculty member that lies for students. No one comes to school to see me. They come to see our faculty. And what happens in that classroom experience, it's not, you do the reading, you do the writing, but it's about how you integrate it. And I think what we are very fortunate of, and I think that's happening here, is whether you want to call it experiential, study abroad, whether it is about how we build active thought and reflection in the classroom so they become stronger in their abilities. Creativity, when parents say to me, I have a lot of parents that come from Asian backgrounds that say to me, creativity, we don't want any of that. I say, then you don't want your son or daughter to become a consultant, because that's all about creativity. Right? If you want to work in McKinsey, you need to be creative. Or Goldman Sachs. Well, not Goldman Sachs, but creativity gets you into deep, deep doo-doo. But I think what I'm trying to say is that our faculty, what happens in the classroom experience, it's about the imagination, but how you interact with the imagination and make it an active story to solve a solution. And that's the way I think it happens. And I think what happens in the classroom is so important. And faculty mentorship is the number one area.
I think just something that we picked up at Rollins with you guys was when we started our faculty hiring at Jindal. This is a personal experience. The first year when we took in 15 students, a lot of other people around the country who run universities, we did find out, they said, what is wrong with these guys? How can you even start a batch with 15 students? We surprised them by hiring 10 faculty members. And they said, what's wrong with these guys? Then we took in 50 students and we hired 17 faculty members. And this year we've taken 75 and there are 20 of us. The mentoring aspect is very important because you have to let them break away from all that has confined them all these years. So when you speak about the box, out of the box, you need to question what is the box? When you come with diverse backgrounds in a country like India, there are different boxes created everywhere. And the idea is in a liberal arts space not to push the concept of out of the box, it's just to try and make them define themselves what is the box in the first place. So this faculty mentoring that Raj was talking about is so important. I ended up spending unofficially with about 70 students a year. We chat all the time, and on campus it's the Dean of Happiness that they call me, which is a fun title to have, and it's a lot of the underground projects that we run. And one of the really cool things that have happened, these are liberal arts students with science backgrounds and both 95%ers. They came in for a conversation, and this is what I think why liberal arts in India is so important. And they walked in and they said, the first thing he said was, this is going to be awkward, but I need to tell you something. And I said, okay, let's do this. He said, oh, my sister saw you on Tinder. And I said, okay, great, where is this going? He said, imagine if we created a Tinder for sports on campuses. Now let me get this straight. 2 people want to play badminton. You're in a campus of 3,000 people. Let both of them match and you go play. 7 o'clock, badminton court. Much better than a Facebook post or asking people when you're walking outside class, do you want to play? Do you want to play? Look at the way you think. You've seen something else, related it to a campus where you're living. You're going to classes where you're teaching originality, where you're teaching thought process, where you're teaching the future of futures. And suddenly you have kids actively thinking, I want to do something different. I don't want to be that one person working in that one company handing files and spreadsheets all day. So liberal arts in that way is really creating new arenas within our younger people. So the challenges that we have from the school perspective is you need more counselors, more teachers to actively spend time with children and tell them that your future does not only lie in conventional mainstream education. In the US, a liberal arts degree is mainstream. In India, it's a small percentage because we question it so much and we question employability. So you have a point to make with the vision paper.
Yeah.
How many of you are aware of the Vision of Higher Education 2030, a paper that's been produced by FICCI and the Planning Commission? Yeah.
Overwhelming response in the room.
Yeah, sorry. I was at a conference where it was presented, and it was named the Liberal Arts Surge in India. Well, I can send you the paper if you wish to see. And here very clearly they've seen how they want to see the higher education sector in India grow. In that they do understand that we need excellence, centers of excellence, so we do need the technical institutions. But we also need this, there's a gap of someone bringing everything in together. So you have a program, a technical person, and you have someone in the business field, but there isn't someone who could bring everyone together and think on a more global and a more, bird's eye view kind of a scene. So they have spoken about liberal arts education in India very strongly, and I really, really hope that this is something that India is looking forward to. And just changing the education system. Now, if you Indian counsellors here do know about Presidency University, Presidency College, Calcutta, it's had a complete revamp. So they actually asked almost 60% of their professors to go and work in another college of the West Bengal and got new, fresh ideas. They had a new chancellor. They are doing liberal arts in a very, very big way. So we do see that coming in at a slow pace, yes, but it is coming in very strongly in India. And this particular paper, I don't want to go to into the details. It's an 85-page paper, but I'll send it out. If you leave me your cards, I'll send that out to you. Very interesting reading. We in fact got all our class 11th and 12th students to sit in and discuss that paper and send in their feedback to FICCI, because they were the real stakeholders. Students who are going through the system and what would they want as education in college. So you could do the same exercise, and they come up with such wonderful ideas. It's crazy to see how young minds work, and we kind of try to compress them and compartmentalize them into very small economics and maths and business and those kind of degrees. So
I just want to put out there that liberal arts is contextualized by where you are. And I want to reinforce the aspect that in the Indian liberal, people think liberal arts means you have no major. There are majors. There are deep. You can study economics, philosophy. You can do a lot of what the coursework, because we want depth as much as we want breadth in liberal arts. But I want to I want to say that I've had great experience in India. I think the liberal arts in India, it will be distinctively Indian. And that should make us very proud. And I'll tell you why. Because we are very fortunate to be here in this context where the East and West come together with the research and scholarship from Africa, from Europe, from America, from Asia. So when I want to reinforce that, because I think people think that to the Western canon or the way the US does it, it cannot be that, because it will actually be problematic. The problems of today's India and this region will come from the solutions from this generation, but it has to be distinctively from the context of what we learn about. So I took a women's studies class that changed my life in Benares, and I must tell you, it was the 8-hour of West, but I learned more about Western thought, Eastern thought, upside down. I mean, I was so confused at the end of the day, but it was great. But I think it was distinctively Indian in the liberal arts tradition.
That's very interesting. We have a class that we teach in Benares. It's about confluence of politics, and we do it at the Ghats in Benares. Just also to give you a little more perspective from the admissions point of view, and this was very surprising as the head of admissions at the liberal arts program. Most number of applications last year didn't come from Delhi or Bombay or Bangalore. It came from Ahmedabad and from Jaipur, which for me was a remarkable stat, because we do most of our outreach predominantly in the metros and the boarding schools. And obviously there's a large number that applied, but last year single-handedly these two cities kind of completely caught us off guard. And the moment we realized, it was also to do with the parents, because a lot of them were returning parents from the US. and returning parents from the UK. And they felt that their children would get confined into a system which is not good, which is why liberal arts. So it's the smaller cities that are taking the lead in India right now, and it's an interesting stat to look at. We're drawing to a close. I mean, this is always a fun session to do, but we're happy to take some questions, or just a last discussion before we move is always the wolf in the room, in Kiran's words, as well as also parents, because as counselors, my only word, and I'm going to bring Namrata in as well, is your biggest hurdle will not be encouraging a child to do liberal arts. It'll be telling a parent that it's okay. How many of you in this room have problems with parents who have got issues? Oh, well, here we go. Hello. Thanks for coming, everyone. That was it about. So, Namrata, how do we tell parents it's okay?
We need to first educate them about the concept of liberal arts. I think first is with education. What does it mean in terms of, and it's not only liberal arts, it's liberal arts and sciences. So a computer science is as much, or biology or physics is as much a part of the curriculum as, something like the arts is. It's not, in your words, fine arts. So that's one, I feel, education. And the other is to allow them, just show them the curriculum. So when, they need to understand within the liberal arts, what is it that they're studying. So I always pull out a curriculum, the course structure from some university, and I have no favorites, anything that's, at the top of my head that day. And with them go through the different structures, okay, this is what they're going to study. The moment they know what they're going to study, they start feeling better about it. So that's the other. And also to tell them that even a place like Georgia Tech has a bit of liberal arts in it. So you cannot shake the liberal arts or that humanities bit out of it. And the last one is to get them to read the, I'm sorry, but Harvey Mudd's website has a beautiful written piece on how they're making engineers, and they need them to have that liberal arts and that touch on humanities, because if we as engineers they do not understand what the real world problems are, they'll never be good engineers. So I think I do a combination of all of these. It has worked, and just keep saying it over and over and over again till the time you feel like a nag, but that's how it's worked.
Just to add on, I was at a school delivering a talk once and got a very infuriated and very angry parent who called me up and said, you've come and you've brainwashed my child. My child is going to become a painter because of you. So I said, I don't think I touched upon art as such. And he said, no, but you spoke about a future in liberal arts, which means he'll be doing fine arts all his life. And I said, no, it's not. So we need to educate parents on what it is, because they think it's painting and sketching and sculpture, which is also fantastic if you're good at it. I would make no money if I got into that profession. But the idea is we have to engage more with parents. So as schools, my only request, and a very valid point that Raj just made while we were just talking right now, is to try and bring parents of existing liberal arts students to talk to other parents. These forums have to be built. If you are excited to build a new higher education space in India, you in this room have to start believing that you are a change agent. Because if you continue embracing the ordinary and hoping somebody else will do your work for you, we will be in an environment where we will have to live that alarm bell life and have a very simple and ordinary future to offer to our children. Any questions in the room? Or we can always email us. But yes, ma'am.
The width, and especially in India, because of the fact that it has just started and we don't have the kind of faculty as much. We haven't seen as much of the faculty, that there could be the danger of children just knowing a little bit of everything and really not having a depth of anything, and that could result in a...
I think what we need to tell them is that how many students with just maybe an engineering degree or economics degree or math degree actually enter the workforce? None of them. I mean, they don't directly enter. They always go in for a master's degree. Does liberal arts degree make them ineligible for MBA? No, it does not. So I think getting them to understand that this is more about education and skills of the course. So if a student, I get it all the time, you know, my son wants to do history, ma'am. History, will he become a professor? History is always a professor or a teacher. Not to, you know, and I would always give them the example of our headmaster, Dr. Peter McLaughlin, who was a history person himself and who was running a very, very huge school. So it isn't about the particular subject in the long run. We always move on, and they aren't, I go back into graduate requirements and show them it's any degree. Why are you worried about them not getting a job in a corporate sector because he's done liberal arts here? And the second about the faculty is mostly, if you see, they're all very, very qualified. So again, pull out the faculty list and show it to them that that's how it is.
With both Ashoka and Jindal, I think we've invested so much in our faculty in terms of the kind of work that we do. I mean, just at Jindal, for instance, we got, 5 Rhodes Scholars, several Fulbright and Erasmus Scholars, 3 ex-ambassadors. The question is, where do they fit in and what are their degrees in? So when you speak about liberal arts, for me, when we started it, we called it the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities, because we realized that getting sciences involved would be very difficult because we weren't finding the right faculty. And also we are far more expertise to teach majors such as psychology or economics or business or history or philosophy, vis-a-vis physics, chemistry, biology. So in the next 5 years, it is in our plans to bring in science faculty once they are A, well qualified, B, when they have the commitment to give at least 5 years to a university. You see, attrition rates in universities are very high, especially in a country like ours where new universities are coming up every day, pay scales are doubled, tripled with one phone call. So when it comes to faculty, I think we're very well placed if you're looking to do a history major or philosophy or economics. But with sciences, it'll take a little time. And I'm glad because we're not selling cheap, we're not selling easy. So I think that's important. But very good question, and thank you for asking. Yes, ma'am.
So in the US, you usually have a bachelor's degree that's 4 years, and that really allows students to have a very breadth of courses, you know, general education courses. And what I've noticed in India is that most of the courses are 3 years, and there's a lot of resistance from parents, from students, from community, it seems, for having that kind of a 4-year program with more general education curriculum. So I'm curious, what are you at your university doing with the programs? Are they 3 years, 4 years, and how are you?
I was sensing a tough question, and I handed him the microphone, and then he's handed it's going to be passed in the parcel. Again, more than anything else, it's actually a government-related issue. Ashoka tried a 4-year, they went to court, but yet they couldn't do anything because UGC norms say as an undergraduate degree for studying bachelor's, which is not law, for instance, which is 5 years, or medicine, which is 5 years, it is constricted to 3 years. So by law, by UGC, and we have to be recognized by UGC. If we're not, no one's going to come to study at the university. Where we compensate, or where we try and give an opportunity, is we do a 1-year research-related teaching, which could work as a 4th year for children who are looking at going to the US, which requires 16 years. In certain cases. So we try and work as much as we can within the rules and framework, because unfortunately we also live in an environment, if we try and do something too creative, the chances of us getting banned are very high. And there's only as much as we'd like to revolt in our younger years. But again, I mean, this is something both Ashoka, Jindal, I know Shiv, Nader, Azim, Premji, all of us have spoken about and tried to figure out, especially with liberal arts, whether we could have looked at a 4-year, but it was struck down immediately. New government, old government, new minister told us it does not matter. There's a bunch of people that run policy, and they're very happy sitting on our old laurels of saying 3 years is more than enough, let them go work, for instance. So, which is a conundrum we face and we have to fight. So it's true. So what we tried to do is we did a 2+2, which is a transnational program, because we felt it was very important to have a 4-year undergraduate opportunity to our students. So and Rollins, for instance, what we did was, we said you do 2 years in India and 2 years in America. So you get 2 degrees at the end of it. At the end of the 3rd year from Jindal, 4th year from Noida. It's an incredible opportunity because at the end of the day, for instance, again, this comes back to your question about science. If up until then you've studied essentially something, you won't take your 101s there. They have a fantastic faculty. So that's something we've tried, and we've sent kids this year. We're going to send a large number next year, so we're excited. So those who are looking at the 4 years still can do that with an Indo-American partnership.
To add to that, if you remember, Delhi University for 1 year had a 4-year undergrad degree, and it worked out. It was supposed to be very good. I was so happy. And the next year, because the government changed, everything changed. So there's 1 year of kids who have done nothing, and they're kind of in that. I feel bad because any policy should be given that much time. And at that time is when Ashoka and O.P. Jindal had started their 4-year undergraduate degree. So they had to squeeze in more time, cut on holidays, and kind of work around the system. But I think let's hope. I mean, it's Vision 2030, and I feel it's too far away that things are going to be in place in some way. But how many of you actually believe in the liberal arts education?
Fantastic. We have one last question there, yes.
Not question, but since we are talking about liberal arts education, I just want to share. Although we recognize that parents play a very important role in decision making, children also, students. From Ashoka last year, we had 2 of the distinct professors coming in and demonstrating what it is to be in a liberal arts environment, learning environment. So one of the professors, she spoke about critical thinking. The topic was critical thinking. She took the theme of love and spoke to the 17-year-old and 18-year-old kids. At the end of the session, they said that was one experience that they had, and they really appreciated that. And we had a lot more students going and convincing the parents about that kind of learning. So it's really important to expose children to the learning environment that they will be in America. That's one thing. I also had this unique opportunity of meeting Dr. Gardner for 30 minutes. It was a very special moment, and he was talking about how important it is for us to kind of encourage younger children to ask fundamental questions. So we did this, what peace means to them, what freedom is all about. There was this peace tree that was created at Videshal, and as the days went by, we saw a lot more children responding to that. So it's really important to nurture those questioning minds in the younger days, and also as they move to the higher levels, the liberal arts faculty, I think instead of just coming and promoting the universities, how about giving workshops and giving them a piece of...
That's all we do. So any school that we do here, it comes down to creative writing workshops, it comes to questioning what are fundamental rights. Just to give you one last example before we close, ma'am, please, at Lamarck College, for instance, in Calcutta, there's an age-old practice that's really helped. Recently, we were just overlooking what everyone is doing from my year at school. So day before yesterday, someone won the Arjun Award. There are 3 people who've taken to being top cops in Naxal-infested areas, Supreme Court lawyers, UN representatives, people who are playing cricket. It's incredible when I look at what my batchmates are doing. And when we had a WhatsApp conversation, we said, my God, we've turned out okay. And we were just talking about how it all worked out. We actually pinpointed to something that happens in Lamarck. It's called Friday Club. What Friday Club did was quite literally, as prefects in 12th grade, we spent time with students from class 2, 3, 4. And you go to them and you work on elocution and public speaking and writing and quizzing. So when we get a lot of credit for being a very good quizzing school, it's not to do with coming to middle school and marking up quiz books. It's that process which starts early. And Friday Club was an incredible opportunity, and it still runs in schools. So every year when I go to a debate or to judge a debate or anything, I meet all these kids and I say, so when did you start debating? And they say, oh, when we started in Friday Club. So in many ways, a school like Lamarck has promoted liberal arts to us from junior school, subtly. And we've realized people that have taught in the school, be it Mr. John Mason, or Anju Mason, or Don Onley, and Mr. Rafi now, but the whole idea is there's a movement, which is a very subtle movement, in creating avenues of growth regardless of what you study in college. Because a lot of times the careers you choose will not be directly linked to what you study at university. And that is something else that we must focus on. So final words, Namrata?
Last anecdote that I remembered, a student one, conversation in the office, what do you want to do? You should become this, or choose this subject. And the boy just turned around and said, I can't even decide what I want to eat, and you want me to choose my subject for college? Why can't I just go into college and undecided and decide while I'm there what I want to do? So as a 17-year-old, we have a whole lot of expectations from our kids. I think it's time for them to just kind of relax and have some fun. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.